Wonderland.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Aaron Hilliard. Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland. If you're new to this channel, I talk mainly about wild mushrooms, but all kinds of mushrooms. Deadly ones, edible ones, hallucinogenic ones, you name it. So often what I do is updates on foraging videos. What kind of mushrooms are growing out there right now? And it is the 22nd of November, 2022. I'm in Western Washington. I'm right down near sea level in the Kitsap Peninsula. And so it's been hit or miss. We've had a drought all the way up until late October, and then it rained for a week, and then it hasn't rained in 2 weeks, and now it's finally raining again today, but it's just been really sparse to find enough mushrooms to make a video. So over the past couple weeks, I've been just filming clips when I come across mushrooms, and I'm gonna identify them for you here today. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, give a thumbs up, and leave a positive comment. We love to hear that kind of stuff. And so just sit back and relax and learn a little bit about mushrooms. Again, my name is Aaron Hilliard. I'm the creator of Mushroom Wonderland. I'm the vice president of the local mycological society here. I've been a mushroom geek my whole life. I'm really involved on Facebook. You can also find me on mushroom.wonderland on Instagram, and you can go to Mushroom Wonderland with a 0 in the Wonderland on TikTok, which is a little obscure. I wish I could get a better name than that. If you have suggestions, please leave them in the comments. So thanks for tuning in. Check out this video, and I'm going to be kind of just jumping all over the place, which is unusual for me, but we're still going to make it entertaining and learn about some cool mushrooms. So thanks for joining, and yeah, much love, everybody. All right, so we came across kind of an interesting species growing all over this log right here. At first glance, you'd think, oh, this is a oyster mushroom or a pleurotus, but this one is actually related to the turkey tail because it doesn't have gills. It actually has pores underneath here. So this one's known as Trametes gibbosa. So it's a lot like turkey tail. These ones are super fresh, very wet, actually like pretty big shelves of them right here on this log. But this one is it's like a turkey tail. It's a pore surface under there, but it doesn't have those colorful concentric rings that versicolor does. So a Trametes, you know, these are non-toxic. You could try to derive medicinal benefits from them, you know, if you cooked them into a tea or something like that, but I've never heard anybody doing it with these ones, Trametes gibbosa. But always growing on some kind of hardwood here in the Northwest. It's going to be like probably a big leaf maple or maybe a red alder. It's hard to tell. This log's pretty far decomposed, but Trametes gibbosa, a less common shelf mushroom that could look like oysters and have you confused when you see the pores underneath. But there you go. Not really desired as an edible or a medicinal or anything like that, but still interesting and beautiful when you see a flush of it like this. So right here growing on the tree is a very common mushroom here in the Northwest, probably the most common mushroom you'll see. It's always growing on wood like this, a dead tree or a log or a stump. And this is known as Fomitopsis mounsii, or the red-belted conch. So this could be used medicinally in a tea or something like that if you're into that kind of thing. But mainly its job is to decompose you know, old wood out here. And it chews away all the white stuff inside, and it just leaves behind all the brown wood, and that's why they call it a brown rot decayer. So Fomitopsis mounsii used to be in a genus, used to be called Panicola or Pinicola, the European taxonomy, but through sequencing and new age ways of deciphering the genetics of these mushrooms, they have discovered that this mushroom is unique from Fomitopsis panicola, so it gets its own name, Fomitopsis mounsii, named after a famous mycologist. So there you go, the most common mushroom here in the Northwest, the red-belted conch. So some of the first mushrooms I see coming out this year. This this beautiful little spray of tiny little mushrooms growing right here. Can you see those? I'm gonna flip the camera around, have a look at these. So I'm seeing a lot of these in the forest right now. And them along with the pine cone, or the fir cone mushroom, the Strobilirus trullisatus. This one is a species of mycena. So little tiny mushrooms like this, and they have white spores, you know, white gills. They're just tiny little white spored mushrooms known as mycena, and there's actually thousands of different species of these. So a huge genus of mushrooms. But these little guys, you know, they must have very vast mycelium under the ground here, but their fruiting bodies are tiny. So what you see on the surface is not always what's growing down underneath there. Hey everybody, so check this one out right here. In the Chanterelles, this is an Earthstar. So how cool is that? It's like it's a little puffball, you see that? That's the spore dispersal. So these little guys are beautiful, and look, it has this star shape that curls up underneath it and actually detaches it from the ground so it can kind of blow around in the wind and just spew its spores all over the place. So very, very cool. Member of the puffball family, and this one's the Earthstar. I always love finding these, and often you can find multiple, but once in a while it's just singular. So still very cool to find, and you can see how the spores get released. Look at that, just released millions of spores. So very cool. This guy is definitely gonna go to the mushroom show. How neat is that? Very cool. Oh, check it out. There's another one. Beautiful. Nice earth stars. How cool are those? Gorgeous. There are a few mushrooms out here that I'm finding. Today I'm coming across some golden chanterelles, some stout little boys that are growing in the moss, and they're just barely peeking out, so you got to look pretty close. But chanterelles are out here, really probably the most popular edible wild mushroom that you'll find in the Northwest, so that's good. You know, these are out here to forage. There's also a couple other mushrooms that are interesting to talk about. These little guys growing on the pine cones, actually the fir cone, sorry. This is known as the fir cone mushroom, even though this is the cone of the Pseudotsuga menziesii. So this is actually the cone of a false hemlock, or the Douglas fir. And so this little mushroom comes out right at the beginning of mushroom season, right when the autumn rains start to fall. And it's already almost the middle of November, and these guys are just showing up. And then there's some little mycenoid mushrooms that are growing on the side of logs and just covering the ground in some areas. They're really kind of white, and then they have a little gray disc in the center. These are a mycena. Wait, let me get that one. There you go. A little mycenoid mushroom, little tiny white spored mushroom. There are just millions of these out here. And so these ones are called Floemana spirea, or the bark bonnet. So bark bonnets, Strobilirus, the fir cone mushroom, and golden chanterelles are what I'm finding out here today. And just hoping for more mushrooms to be popping up. They really should be any day, but the mycelium is no doubt slowed down by the cold weather that's just set in right after our first rain. So we're just getting the 1-2 punch of a lousy mushroom season. But you know, in the spring, if you remember, we were picking so many morels, so you know, you got to take the good with the bad. But normally the sides of this trail would be covered with russulas and lactarius and stuff like that. Winter chanterelles and candy caps and all kinds of good mushrooms would normally be out here, and bad mushrooms, just all kinds of mushrooms normally are carpeting the floor of a forest like this. Not today, my friends, but maybe tomorrow. So stay tuned. Look right down here, trail side, and it looks like the color of chanterelles, but this is definitely not chanterelles. These are some form of amanita, and you can tell they've got looks like an egg kind of that this thing's popping out of. So that's the vulva. That's indicative of amanita mushroom. So these ones are really like orange colored. Really interesting to see what those look like here in a few days. I'll come back and get some video of what these grow into, but you could mistake them for puffballs, or that color could be mistaken for a chanterelle. just walking along the trail side, and I see these growing here next to the bottom of the base of this tree. Some kind of brown capped mushrooms, and I'm betting that when I flip this over, it's gonna have like a really beautiful violet color underneath. So let's gently pick one of these. See that? It's very kind of violet colored, but you know, I was mistaken. I thought that this was a bluet. I thought this was Lepista nuda, but this one has got this rusty colored spore. You can see it in the gill. So this is a type of Cortinarius that could easily be confused for a bluet mushroom, which are good edible mushrooms, but Cortinarius have a lot of poisonous mushrooms. Some of them are deadly. These ones aren't deadly, but these, I'm pretty sure they are toxic. But you can tell because of that spore color. A bluet has like a pink spore color, but man, they sure look close. But you can also see there's kind of fuzzy looking on here on the cap. So, not a good one to eat, but this could really be mistaken for a really common edible mushroom called a bluet. So, be careful with these when you're going out picking bluets, that you don't run into a Cortinarius accidentally, because these could make you very sick. So. All right, so something caught my eye down here. Kind of looked like a dark pine cone, but I could tell it was of a different shape. And so if we look at this guy, not in the best shape, but look, it's got teeth underneath there, like a hedgehog mushroom or something. This one's really dark and like just looks, I mean, you wouldn't even hardly see that. Look like a rock or something. But this one is Sarcodon. I guess the ones up here don't really have names. The old taxonomy was Sarcodon and Bractis. And this is edible. Some people call it the bitter hedgehog, but other people like to pickle it. And, you know, it's totally edible. All of these that have these teeth hanging off the bottom are going to be edible. There's Hydnellum peckii, which isn't really a good edible because it's so woody, but you can still eat it. It's not toxic. But these ones are okay to eat. It's just super blending in. You see that? Laying next to this leaf. So we saw these, a lot of these in Colorado last summer, and they were a lot bigger and had all kinds of cool scales on them. Here's the beginning of what those scales are going to look like, but this one's pretty sad looking, so we'll give it a couple taps to get its spores spreading out and just put it back. All right. So I'm in one of my favorite habitats, and there's normally just tons of mushrooms that grow out in this area. I'm near some 5-needle pines that are known to be a host to a lot of different mushrooms, including matsutake and the porcini, you know, boletes edulis. I'll often find huge flushes of suillus in this area, and chanterelles, just all kinds of mushrooms. It's just been like the worst mushroom year ever. So if you're discouraged, you know, don't be, because next year is going to be better. There's no way it could be worse than this. We're in the middle of November. Most of these mushrooms in my area that are super common, like all the russulas, didn't even come up this year yet. I don't know, maybe they will still, but it's frosted a couple times. Not a real heavy frost, so I still have hope for it, but just an unusually terrible mushroom year. So if you're out there and you're just going, oh man, what's the point? I can't find any mushrooms. You know, normally on any other year, there's way more mushrooms than we're seeing this year. 2022 fall in the PNW, kind of a bust for mushrooms. Yes, I'm actually using my flashlight to see mushrooms. Really helps out here. It's literally 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Washington State, but it is pretty dark in the woods, even though my camera phone does a pretty good job of compensating for the light. But I came across these growing right here under this fern
And they're growing right out of the base of what looks like this sword fern, just kind of out of the needle duff. But you can see the decurrent gills, the way that margin kind of enrolls. So this one is Clitopilus, Clitopilus prunulus. So the sweetbread mushroom. This is an edible mushroom that grows here and in Europe. It's probably not the same Clitopilus that occurs in Europe, but they call it the sweetbread mushroom. It's a pink spored mushroom. And they say this one is it's good to eat. So it's a beautiful mushroom, very Clitosabe looking, and Clitosabe has some pretty poisonous members of its little family. So, but this one, Clitopilus prunulus, is a good edible mushroom. So there's one and a little baby here, and they don't usually grow in big groups, but I'm actually going to collect these and take them back to look at under the microscope and stuff. So kind of a pretty one. Maybe we can look at it in the light better. But this one's growing despite the lack of rain. Most of the mushrooms growing right now that I've seen over the past week or two have been grown out of logs. So this one's a little different, growing out of the needle duff, giving me hope that there might be other mushrooms that are growing out of the needle duff and a little more variety of mushrooms. So kind of cool, the sweetbread mushroom. Here's a little patch of Devil's Club, if you've ever seen this stuff. It has got some gnar freaking pokies on it. And I smell the most rancid smell ever. And I look down and I see these big boys. Look at these. They're rotten and they're nasty. These are blackening russulas in the Russula nigricans group. Nigricans. And flip it over. Oh yeah, these are way old. And see how they turn black? Sometimes these get a parasite that gets growing on them. The Astrophoria. That it's a powder cap that grows on the top of these mushrooms, and in one of my other videos I show those, but I'm kind of surprised to see these without that stuff growing on them. But these are so foul smelling. Oh my gosh, they smell like a dead animal. So clearly you would not want to eat those, even if you could. They are rancid. Whew. Right, also by the Devil's Club, I'm seeing a couple other mushrooms. There's one right down here. What is this guy? Oh, it's all mushed. So we've got a type of a pluteus, or a deer mushroom, that's kind of squished down there. There's another really bad looking Russula. Over here I see the beginnings of what looks like a type of Ramiria, a little coral fungi growing out of the ground here. Really tough to tell if it's an edible species or not. I'm not an expert on these. Oh, there's another tuft of it right there. So it's pretty, and it could look like the Hericium coralloides, but this is actually in the genus Ramiria. So some of these cause pretty bad gastrointestinal upset. I'm not sure which one this is. But coral fungus. And then, wow, little cool looking brown dude right here with the shaggy little head. Look at him. Not even sure what that is. So if y'all know, let me know. We don't have Old Man of the Woods around here, as far as I know, but that's kind of unique, even though it's super small. Look at how little it is. So that is a neat mushroom. And I'm going to load this onto iNaturalist. I'm going to take some photos. Look at it. It's got a lot of like fibrillose texture on that stipe. A real shaggy head. Brown. It's beautiful. I'm going to take a couple pictures. Let's see what it looks like underneath. So, this is how you ID mushrooms. You gotta pick them. If we look down on this big fallen, what I imagine is a western hemlock, there's this huge big conch mushroom. See that guy? That's awesome. So that's not a red-belted conch, but closely related. This and red-belt, the red-belted conchs used to be in the same, used to be called the same thing, Fomitopsis panicola. But this one is now its own thing, Fomitopsis ocratia. So it's kind of hoof-shaped, but another polypore that is a brown rot decayer, eating the all the cellulose inside of the wood here of this log. So it really helps to break down all the matter here in the forest. Otherwise you just have a big stack of pickup sticks. But these ones clearly look different than your red-belted conch. They don't have the belt and they're not red colored. So Fomitopsis ocratia, I kind of like the hoof fungus here in the Northwest. There's a lot of hoof-shaped fungus, but this one more so out of the two Fomitopsis. So, important brown rot decayers on logs like this. Actually, that one's Monsier, so that's Fomitopsis Monsier. This one's Fomitopsis ocratia. Some people just don't even want to make the distinction because sometimes they can look so close. They really can overlap. Sometimes you get on top of a log like this, you can get a nice view, lay of the land here, and look for mushrooms for a little ways out. And I look around until I see something interesting looking. And the flashlight really does help. It's crazy. What do we got there? Perfect. Little brown, look like bark bonnets. Little mycenoid mushrooms growing here all over the floor of the forest. They're just tiny little things kind of scattered in with all the Strobilirus that's growing on the fir cones, on the Douglas fir cones. So a lot of these little tiny mycenoid mushrooms, little white spored mushrooms. I'm in this like super dark area. It's seriously 4:22 p.m. right now, but it's this dark out in the forest especially. But look at that. Big deer shield mushroom is what some people call it. This one's got a really dark cap. It's a pluteus, so it's got pink spores. And it's always growing out of dead wood like this. This is an old log. And so, you know, it looks kind of like a deer skin. And they call it the deer mushroom. And you could eat it. It's edible. And the Entelomiaceae. Look at how it's coming out of the ground like that. Man, this video is rough. Sorry about that, but beautiful. Finding a way to live. There was another totally destroyed one over here. Oh yeah. Oh, fallen soldier. So pluteus, a good sign that, you know, mushrooms are coming to life out here. Wherever you find a log jam like this, when it's wet enough to produce mushrooms, you'll often find these pluteus mushrooms growing out of the logs. Not desirable, but you could eat them if you wanted. I'm here with these beautiful mushrooms that are growing here in November in Washington State. This is known as Leccinum scabrum, or the Birch Bolete. They're always growing in association with birch trees like this. So mycorrhizal mushroom, very cool. These are decent edible mushrooms. Sometimes known to cause gastric distress, but most people can tolerate them just fine, so kind of cool. Join Mushroom Wonderland for more mushroom related content.